Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Barrens Chat podcast. I'm Sod, and with me tonight is my co-host Guck. This is a podcast about World of Warcraft by two guys who play it. And it's here, it's patch day. We're sorry that we weren't live last week. I was sick, and it was a slow week for WoW, and Guck had things going on, so we thought it best to just hold off and come at you hard with this big episode for patch 8.3, which is live Tuesday, which is awesome for WoW. Guck, how's WoW been going for you?
All right, yeah, I mean, WoW for me has been great. These past few weeks have been, like you mentioned, very slow, but in Classic, I actually managed to get the Onslaught Girdle, which is it is a very valuable drop for DPS warriors out of Molten Core. It's known as the Rag Belt, but I finally got it. I had a roll off with one other DPS, and I won. So I'm very happy about that. One more purple down the chamber there. The rest of the time, though, I mean, we had our Christmas Eve episode, we had our New Year's Eve episode, and then we took it off last week. In that time, I really haven't done that much. I've just kind of raided, and we've kind of waited. And then, almost out of nowhere, I get kind of this reminder that, like, hey, Season 4 of Mythic Plus and patch 8.3 with a brand new raid, all of that stuff isn't just coming out this month. It's coming out today. When we publish this episode, it's going to be live on Tuesday, today, the 14th, and that just blows my mind. Obviously, the raid itself won't be available, but everything that you're going to be doing is going to be N'Zoth and Ny'alotha themed. You are getting geared up for the raid that will take place next week in normal and heroic. It's just like the excitement has just kind of sprung up on me out of nowhere. Were you like anticipating this? Were you really prepared for this reset? Because like I, for one, did not really appreciate that next reset is 8.3.
So I am semi-prepared, I would say. My neck is capped out. I've saved dailies. I've saved a handful of Paragon bags on my Warlock. I haven't done like all the min-maxing, but I've done like a decent amount of it to where like I'll have a head start over somebody who hasn't done any of it. But I've been kind of prepared for it. I'm in like a heroic raiding guild that is pretty good, but my schedule's very hectic. So like I'm kind of bummed that it's here because I can't commit all the time that I want to. But I'm so pumped to have this new patch in real content with WoW, new Mythic Plus affix, just all kinds of new content coming at us, which is great and interesting. I'm even pumped for the allied races. I've been kind of messing around on like just pushing alts and maybe getting heritage armors just casually. So I'm really excited for that. I think Tuesday's going to be awesome, and I have the night off of school, so I get to play a little bit, which is going to be awesome.
Yeah, it seems like the release of the patch. So today, as you guys are going through 8.3, it sounds like there's going to be a pretty long period of kind of introductory questing. I know that as we're getting towards the end of the expansion, they need to wrap up the story. But I heard in several different videos that it's 2 hours plus or minus, depending on if you're going really fast. Depending on class limitations and if you're, taking your time with it or not. I think that's kind of interesting as a choice. I don't know if I myself will be enjoying it. I'm sure by the end of it, I will feel like, okay, come on, let's get into the patch itself. I want to get through this scenario. Like, why couldn't this have been a cutscene or something like that? But it's their creative choice. If that's how they want to tell the story through kind of an interactive questing thing, that's fine. But just remember, you're going to dive into the patch and be greeted with these kind of longer quests. But, after that, that's when you really get into these systems that we are going to dive into shortly.
Yeah, that and honestly, if that's the way it's looking for alts, it looks like it's going to be miserable, and this will be just another patch where I only play one character, which really is going to hurt my feelings. So hopefully there's a skip scenario. Otherwise, I will not be doing Ny'alotha content on more than one or two characters.
Yeah, I think if it's unskippable, this seems like a 2 character maximum patch, and then when you add in the fact that both of these characters need to go back and play through 8.2 stuff to get all of the right essences and all the right ranks, it's really discouraging.
Yeah, agreed. And hopefully they've learned their lessons. But I mean, who knows? Really, this patch should be awesome. It comes with a ton of content. The first day you got to dedicate a lot of time to it, and then hopefully, allegedly, this patch, according to people that have play tested it, is supposed to be great for the solo player. So I guess there's a lot to look forward to in that, in the sense that you don't need to have a group. So even if your friends aren't on and you don't have a raid that night, you'll have a lot to do. Is the way the patch seems. I don't play on the PTR. I know you don't play on the PTR. There are a lot of people that do, and based on what they say, this looks like a good solo patch.
Yeah, I think a part of what they're getting at is going to be the fact that horrific. I already said it. I said before the episode that I would continuously say heroic instead of horrific visions, but yeah, the horrific visions are balanced around 1 to 5 players. So yeah, if you're a solo player, you can go in and enjoy that entirely new system from this patch on your own. And they say that it should be balanced out appropriately. I don't know if there's a lot else that they will be adding that will make you kind of feel fine getting through the content as a solo player. I mean, for me, the fact that they're adding a raid as massive as this one with 12 raid bosses is pretty telling that, yeah, I mean, even as a solo player, you can get through stuff, but find that good group and get into a challenging raid environment because I'm sure this is going to be one of the greats.
Yeah, and with the new seasonal effects and the Mythic Pluses that will be scaled on the first raid day, I think. I don't think the Mythic Plus scales until a week after patch launch. Does that sound right to you, Guk?
To be honest, I'm not sure either. I don't know if they're going to do that thing where your plus 10 rolls over into the next season's rating of plus 10 items or not. I think we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, so I know Keystones will dip by approximately by 4 levels. So if you complete a 15, it's going to drop to an 11. That's basically the standard that, from what I understand, is how the patch launch or the new season launch is going to happen. And obviously, the rewards scale, Titan Forging isn't going to be a thing. You're going to have corruption. So it'll be cool. Like, get into the Mythic Pluses, try to min max yourself before your raid. And if you're trialing for a new guild, which a lot of guilds were recruiting for the start of this patch, for the start of this raid tier, get a little bit of gear. Maybe try to give yourself that leg up and look like a better raider going into the patch, and really show yourself off to your new guild.
Yeah, and now talking about Mythic Plus, I think, despite everything that happened with BFA, one of the best things that they did was they innovated on the very successful Mythic Plus system from Legion with new seasonal affixes. And one of the things that everyone looks forward to when there's a new raid is the new seasonal affix that is based on that raid, kind of bleeding over into the dungeon experience. So Season 4 is going to have Awakened. And when they revealed Awakened, I forget when they did it, but it's been a little while that we've known about this. It's kind of like the rogue killer. It doesn't force you to have to always bring a rogue for their Shroud of Concealment. Essentially, you can teleport through the Void Realm, the N'Zoth Realm, however you want to talk about it, through Nyalotha, and move through the dungeon physically and come out at another obelisk further down the dungeon and effectively skip stuff as if you had a rogue with Shroud of Concealment. So this allows groups now that are trying to push keys to push them with their friend group, as opposed to a group that's like, okay, well, we've got 4 friends, now we need a rogue. That's going to be a good thing for the casual player, for the regular player. I'm interested to see how this applies on the Mythic Plus competitive scene, because that's one of the things that a lot of people complain about is very stagnant group compositions in Mythic Plus. So, and again, I mean, a large part of that is because of the Rogue's Shroud and how useful that is in mitigating the ad percentage that you need to deal with. So I'm really curious to see how this is used on the competitive scene, because I know this is going to be a pretty entertaining and somewhat quality of life improving affix for the regular kind of dungeon runner.
Yeah, I think it'll be like especially huge to see like in the Mythic Dungeon International, like all you see is the same comp over and over again, and I'm curious to see like if we're gonna start getting casters in there, like mages and warlocks, and like maybe even different sort of class stacking that you don't we haven't seen in 3 or 4 seasons because everybody's been stacking rogues with a Windwalker monk or a Death Knight. So maybe people stack specifically all the damage. Either way, I think it'll be really cool to watch, and I think it's actually a cool affix too because it allows you to interact with the dungeon in ways that really groups couldn't do that before, which is cool, which is great to see. And me, like, I don't play with a lot of rogues, I don't know a lot of rogues, so I think that's really cool that like I almost never bring invisibility pots either because I'm a piece of crap. But it's just one of those things where it lets you be more competitive in the scene, and it really should help you time a lot more dungeons because you can skip trash that gives you a hard time and that a lot of people hit walls at, especially on fortified weeks.
Yeah, it's kind of funny when you think about this affix and you think about the people who run Mythic Plus, but they don't really consume WoW content outside of the game that they play, which is a lot of people. There are going to be people who are like going into this seasonal affix and they'll use this basically Shroud of Concealment copy to do something very similar to what rogues have been allowing their parties to do all expansion. And they're going to realize, like, wow, this is actually way easier than I've been doing it all these past 3 seasons. If they've never really ran with a rogue or they've pugged and they're inconsistent with rogues who even know when are the good points to use Shroud, I think a lot of people are going to be pleasantly surprised and they'll see like, oh, wait a minute. Like, this is why this meta has evolved and kind of stayed this way for so long. This all makes sense now.
Yeah, and on top of that too, the horrific visions, the legendary cloak, all those small like details that you can change to your character and make your character more powerful. And unfortunately for me, in my last chest, I haven't run a Mythic Plus in about a week. In my last chest, I got a 450 Titan Forge cape, which I'm gonna replace on patch day. And there's really nothing that is more of a bummer than seeing something like that. So shame on you, Blizzard, for ruining my day. And now I have to go farm more Mythic Plus and try to get that. You know, I just want that new chest where you can choose a reward out of it, so I can like increase my character's power my way. You know what I
It's
mean?
almost a bad thing that they let us know that that's coming in Shadowlands, right? Because now it's like, well, why the hell am I dealing with this old chest system if there's going to be this way better new chest system?
Oh, it's terrible, and it's like I opened it. I did like a plus 14. I was actually pushing keys too, and I haven't run them, which is like kind of bad. But I was pushing like high keys, and I was like, oh man, I can't wait to see what my chest is. And boom, I get a cloak, and it's like, okay, this is nice for this week when I'm not even raiding, and I'm gonna replace this. Like total bummer.
Thinking about that, the fact that you got a back piece, it's literally the worst slot to get something in out of your week, whatever, the week of the seventh reset. Like, that is hands down the worst. Like, you're going to walk in next reset, talk to Rathian, and replace it immediately, even though you have a currently max item level item drop. It's just like, it sucks because we know so much about Shadowlands. We know what it's going to be like, but we're not there yet, and we still have to deal with what we have now, and it's just frustrating.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest part. Like I took like a couple days off there too, and I was like, man, like I'm just doing all this WoW content right now. I just really want Shadowlands to be here. This is kind of a bummer, but at the same time, I'm so prepped and ready for Shadowlands, and right now I'm just kind of like enjoying myself. Like I get on, I mess around a little bit, and like I enjoy myself. I'm not like pushing myself to or forcing myself to do anything. I'm not farming transmog. I'm not like doing any of that stuff that I don't enjoy and I just do to kill time. So I have been enjoying WoW. I'm just so ready for this next expansion. Although I am excited for the new raid tier, and I'm curious to see how a 12 boss raid affects the game, and if it brings a lot of people back.
I feel like the podcast thus far is kind of a metaphor for how patch 8.3 is going to play out, right? We've gotten through probably a quarter of the content for patch 8.3 that we want to unpack, but we're already so like excited about Shadowlands that the stuff that's here isn't really, sinking its hooks into us as players. Like we're going to have this new content, we're going to dive into it, but 25% of the time that patch 8.3 is going to be live is probably going to be spent enjoying the content. The other 3/4 of 8.3's longevity is going to be people flying around their hub cities waiting for Shadowlands because everyone's really excited about it and everyone's still pretty disappointed with BFA despite the new stuff coming in 8.3.
Yeah, but I mean, with that, we have solo content that you can do it either as a solo player or a group player with horrific visions. You don't want to mess up your first horrific vision. It will set you back a week behind. So don't choose the hardest difficulty if you don't think you can handle it. I'm sure there will be players min-maxing that, which more power to them. But you as like an everyday WoW player, me certainly as an everyday WoW player, uh, I'm probably going to take it easy, maybe do the easiest mode, make sure that I power up my cloak as much as possible and that I don't waste an entire reset because I thought that I was better than I was and I didn't upgrade my cloak and I lost an entire week on that.
So getting into the new systems in 8.3 kind of in chronological order based on how you'll have to deal with it. And this is kind of the beginning of the 8.3 cycle. It's very cyclical. You'll start with those quests that we mentioned from Magni, who's going to send you through some zone revisits. You'll see different zones that have been revitalized graphically, but now there's like this N'Zoth invasion. This is pretty similar to the old Legion invasions. After you clear these assaults, well, after the quests, you'll have the assault. After you clear through the assault, you will have access to a lesser vision. And in this first lesser vision that you get into, you really want to focus on killing the end boss and not getting distracted. Because if you spend too much time in that lesser vision, you'll end up losing sanity and you won't get to the boss objective in time. And that will basically lock you out of being able to get into a horrific vision. These lesser visions basically give you the exact amount of currency. There's going to be a new currency in 8.3. And they give you the exact amount that you need to get into a horrific vision. It's kind of like a key. And in those horrific visions, which you'll only have enough money for a certain amount every week, you have to make sure that you make it through there. Otherwise, your cape won't upgrade. And now that's a whole bunch of stuff all at once. So to unpack it, the assaults, very straightforward. You're going to be doing World Quest tier stuff. The lesser visions, these are going to be like a slightly harder, more engaging world quest that ends in a solo battle. All of this content is stuff that you won't be affected by, really. It'll be pretty normal stuff. But then once you get back to the Forge and once you unlock a horrific vision through Rathian, then things will get a little bit different. That's when you really get into the horrific vision, and that is where basically that's the crux of 8.3, getting into those horrific visions, making sure that you go through it quickly enough that you're getting to the end to kill the boss, but also collecting enough of the corrupted mementos along the way that can help fuel your Titanic research, which is going to be another research tier. Think of the Legion Order Hall, think of the boat lore. This is going to be another kind of 8.3 themed research that you'll have access to. But yeah, that's really kind of the crux of 8.3, making sure that you get into those horrific visions, get to the end of them, and then complete it so that you can upgrade your cloak.
All in all the new content is very confusing. Really, I'm going to be using. I've read this over several times. Guck just explained it way better than I ever could. I'm going to be staring at guides on the launch day of this patch because it's a lot of information to take in. I don't want to mess anything up with my horrific vision or my cloak or waste a reset. So take your time. Don't be afraid to have a guide open on Wowhead or Method is release guides. There's all these guides that you can look at on YouTube or on one of the websites with WoW content. I'm assuming most people are familiar with them, and don't hesitate to look at those because this patch is so massive and has so much information and content on it that really, if you want to feel like, if you don't want to miss out on any of it, don't be afraid to look it up and kind of ask questions.
Yeah, I think Sod hits the nail on the head with that. You want to take your time at every interchange between these steps. Before you get into the assault, go check a guide. Go look at the news page of WoW. Figure out what it is you need to accomplish here, then accomplish it. There's going to be a pause between that and the lesser vision. Make sure you know what the lesser vision is going to be like. Get into it, get the most out of it. Do that before you dive into these brand new systems, because just like Sod said, if you don't get the most out of it when it's provided to you, you're going to set yourself behind, because a lot of these things are effectively time gated because of the fact that you'll only have access to these things more or less every week. And after that access, it goes away until next week. You have to be really careful about getting the most out of it.
Yeah, and everybody plays this game different ways, right? Not everybody raids. I like to raid. I'm sure a lot of people actually enjoy raiding and maybe can't fit it in their schedule. And that's fine. Maybe you're into pet battles now, so there's all kinds of different things like that. They do have new pet battle content. That's not my cup of tea. Maybe it's yours. There's literally, this patch has something for everybody in WoW. Like any which way you could imagine playing this game, this patch drops some content for you, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, and like these kind of two throwaway things that I found looking through the patch, which are pretty good things for the people who enjoy these systems. Deepwind Gorge is getting a full redesign, so if you're into PvP, there's going to be a really cool new version of Deepwind Gorge. If you're into pet battling, there's a brand new pet battle dungeon, and this is like a really smart one because it coincides with Classic. It's in BRD. You're going to go through Blackrock Depths doing the pet battle. So if you're someone like me who does Classic and retail simultaneously, you'll get some of those kind of familiar vibes as you go through BRD on your retail character. So yeah, I mean, this is going to be a cool patch. Obviously, like with any patch, there are several class tweaks. They're throwing in more King's Rest nerfs, which I think is hilarious that even now at Season 4, we are still nerfing King's Rest because it is just still not ready to go. But yeah, this is gonna be a good patch. I think the quality of life that the auction house changes are bringing, that's going to be a very lasting benefit for everyone. The fact that you can buy individual units, like let's say I put up a stack of 14 ingots and someone only wants to buy 10, they can buy 10 of my 14, and then I still have 4 on the auction house. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing kind of stack sale. So yeah, there's some really cool stuff coming this patch.
Yeah, and the auction house thing is cool. I use add-ons, so I probably won't notice it, but I do think that is a huge quality of life change that the game has needed for literally its entire lifespan, which is awesome. And good job on Blizzard for updating that. There's new essences, and it seems like they will actually be viable. So if you don't have good essences on your character currently, it looks like that the new essences will be viable in the new content, whether you want to PvP or raid or just kill stuff in the world and maybe kill it a little faster. Um, I think I think that's awesome. I think that's a really good thing because having to go back and farm 8.2 content just to remain relevant is not going to seem fun. And definitely trying to find a group to run Eternal Palace to get that essence over the course of several weeks is not going to be enjoyable for a lot of people because finding those groups is going to take forever. And it's also like that none of those bosses are really walkovers. I'm sure they will be with gear, but you have to do it on like heroic to kill anything even remotely fast enough to not have to run it for like a month on end. And it's going to be ridiculous trying to find groups for that. So
Yeah, the one thing that these new essences have going for them is they come with some static amount of corruption resistance that may actually increase as you rank up that essence. And I would say early on, that's going to make those essences way more valuable than the other ones because of how specific corruption resistance ties into the raid. When we think about the cloak and how important it is that you maximize getting that resistance stacked up on your cloak because of the fact that it's time gated, a way to help catch up and stay up with your resistance is to use one of these essences. So I wouldn't be surprised to see, hopefully, as long as they balance them right, a lot of these essences seek in, or seep in rather, to all of the different classes and specs as far as their best in slot essences. That would be a really smart thing for Blizzard to do, to like maybe even slightly overtune the new essences to prevent the overwhelming feeling of, oh god, I have to go back and do 8.2 content just to get an essence. You know, it could be nice where it's like, don't worry, these new essences will fill that gap, and they'll do it in an effective way. It's not just like a band-aid, it'll be an effective replacement. That would be big, and I'm hoping to see that.
yeah, that I think corruption resistance is going to be the most important thing on anything in this patch. I would imagine just the way that the gearing is going to work and the effects that it looks like that is going to have on your gear. I think that is going to be probably the biggest thing with the new essences and the cloak. I think that'll be the most important, single most important thing. Like similar to Titan Forging, I think it'll be like that. I don't know if that was the intention, but I think that's the way it'll go.
Yeah, the last few pieces kind of still revolve around these horrific visions. The mementos that you will collect in these visions, you can use to purchase sockets on your corrupted gear. So that's another way that this new corrupted gear can be used to your advantage. You can put a socket on it. I think adding sockets is just another way to add player agency. If they want to min max, you can. If you don't want to min max, you don't have to. But giving more options is always better than fewer options. In those horrific visions, they've talked about these things called faceless masks, and I'm not entirely sure how this will work, but you essentially find them in the horrific vision, and equipping it or clicking it or using it will add difficulty to that vision, either through unlocking another wing or buffing the monsters or whatever it ends up doing. Essentially, there's going to be a challenge mode added to these horrific visions through these faceless masks. And to prepare for it, you can look and find new horrific vision specific foods that can help you through these. These are going to be pretty different. I know there's a selection of at least 2 or 3, and they may be better than your standard food. So that's something that you can look into to get through those horrific visions a little more easily.
Yep, and also they are releasing Heroic Darkshore for, so if you're into the Warfronts, that is available. I mean, realistically, it's really just a free piece of gear that unfortunately you will have to do for the first couple weeks to, just keep your character relevant and gear yourself up. And then once you're geared up in heroic or normal, whatever you need gear for, it'll be there to gear your alts, and that's really all it's there for. Unfortunately, that is content that exists. It is content they are releasing with this patch. I will never enjoy the Warfronts. I think they were a complete failed idea for this expansion, but it is free loot. I will do it. So, enjoy it while it's there. Take the free purple.
The good thing about the Warfronts is the only good thing about them is that it's on a very long spread out reset, right? So you only have to do this thing once in a blue moon. But yeah, much like Island Expeditions, Warfronts were a huge swing and a miss from the WoW dev team.
And they've done that with content, like they did that with scenarios in Miss of Pandaria, where it was like a 3-man almost dungeon but not really dungeon kind of thing, and it failed. It only lasted in Pandaria and it never came back. I actually did a couple while I was in Pandaria thinking it was good content, and then I realized that it was a waste of my time and I should just be doing 5-mans. So
Speaking of Pandaria, the Pandaren can now be Death Knights, right? As long as you've pre-purchased Shadowlands, you can have Panda Death Knights, Allied Race Death Knights. Everyone's a Death Knight if you have Shadowlands.
Yes, all classes can be Death Knights. That's another thing I'm really pumped up about is the new allied races, and I probably will make a couple Death Knights. I do enjoy the Death Knight that I do have, and really pumped up to just mess around with the new classes, unlock the new allied races, Volpera and Mechanomes, which I have unlocked already. Oh, not unlocked, but I have the rep, so I'm gonna unlock them once patch launches. I'm really pumped about that. The scenarios are cool. I remember the Magar Orc one. Gul'dan actually gave me like some issues. It wasn't like it wasn't hard, but it wasn't a walk in the park either. So I think that is actually really cool and was good content. So I'm looking forward to see what that has in store for me.
And then kind of at the end of this, these are the two things that we've kind of saved for the end are the two things that I think I'm the most excited about. The first one being Operation Mechagon is being split into two halves, the front and back half for Mythic Keystones. So this is much like Upper and Lower Karazhan, if you remember that during Legion. This is going to be great. I think before this point, having Operation Mechagon in the game was fun, but it wasn't something that people really ran regularly unless you were hunting for the mount, you're hunting for some specific Mechagon thing that you need. But it wasn't worked into the catalog of dungeons because it wasn't mythic. So now that it's mythic, we're going to get two additional dungeons that you can kind of go in, kind of break up the monotony of getting your keystone over with through. But one of the things that I noticed that I'm now kind of like disappointed with, we didn't get a Nazjatar themed dungeon. We didn't get or we're not getting rather, a Nyalotha themed dungeon. The only dungeons that were really the only dungeons that we've gotten since release is basically Operation Mechagon, right? Siege of Boralus and King's Rest were like what, reputation gated, and after that point we've only gotten this new dungeon.
Yeah, it was like I don't even know if it was rep gated. I think it was war campaign gated. You just had to hit a certain point, and I think for the opposing factions, you did have to hit a certain rep point to get that far in the war campaign. But yeah, I mean, if you think back in Legion, we had Cathedral and I forget what
See,
the Argus
there was
one,
Cathedral of the Night and then the Seat of the Triumvirate. We got
and we had
yeah,
Karazhan too, which
and
was a
Karazhan.
patch release.
Yeah,
So
Karazhan is kind of like the Mechagon here, but then Broken Shore got the Cathedral, and then Argus patch we got Triumvirate. So like each patch came with a dungeon, and then that middle patch came with a mega dungeon. We got the mega dungeon, but we didn't get the two other dungeons in BFA.
yeah, and the thing is, like, I feel like they've invested so much in 5-man content, and I think it's such a huge part of the game right now. Like with Mythic Plus and Raider IO, where it is, I think that's such a big part of the game that like to not release any new 5-man content probably isn't good for the health of the game. I mean, you're just going to go back. A lot of people, right? A lot of the Mythic Plus players, anyway, and probably regular players are just going to go farm those 5-mans, the same 5-mans they've been farming the entire expansion. They're going to get the same gear they've been getting with a different number on it. I don't think that is very riveting content. I don't know what else they could do to change that. I mean, that is the way it is, I guess, if you're a 5-man player and a Mythic Plus player. But I would guess that, getting the same trinkets over and over again and the same rings and the same weapons and so on uh, probably doesn't seem that cool. And in fact, I would bet that it gets a little old.
Yeah, and I totally see how just like the monotony of doing the same dungeons, because like eventually you get to a point where you're like, okay, these mythic pluses are the fastest, we're going to run these to save the most time and get the most out of our time. It's a monotony that sucks the fun out of the game. It makes the game not fun just because of how repetitive it is.
Yeah. And that being said, I love running Mythic Pluses. I think it's awesome. You're kind of in a race against the clock. I think it's great content. I wish I had more friends to do them with. I mean, you and I have been running them a little bit lately, even like higher ones too, on probably somewhat undergeared characters. And I think it's awesome trying to run them and being like, oh, dude, we could do this. We could 3-chest this. And that to me is what makes Mythic Plus so fun. And I really enjoy that content, and obviously, I probably won't have a stable group for it until Shadowlands because nobody wants to come back to WoW until then. But I definitely dabble, and I do one or two per week now, and I get my chests. But you know, it's I would have liked to see a new dungeon, and Mechagon I've only actually run one time, so I'm definitely in for a rude awakening for my first Mechagon key.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's kind of a good thing. Like every other dungeon is such a pushover that now having something new, like, and it's actually a little bit challenging because of how new it is. That to me is way more fun and way more engaging content than just like, oh, we've arbitrarily added health onto the same freehold mobs. Go run freehold again. Like that's just not fun to me. So I'm glad that we are getting Mechagon. Disappointed that we're only getting those two instead of the four from the expansion. But I'll take it. The last big thing, which is I think massive in scale, and from the lore and just from the size of it, the 12 raid boss that opens up on the 21st for normal and heroic. Uh, I am so excited for Nyalotha. I'm ready to get in there and fight N'Zoth. Looking through the wings, there are 4 wings in total with some very notable bosses. There's Ra Den, he's back. Il'gynoth, he's back from Legion. N'Zoth himself, obviously, he's going to be the penultimate and the final battle. You fight his carapace first, and then you'll fight N'Zoth himself. This raid's just going to be massively epic. I'm excited for the aesthetic, the music, the feel of it, just like all the tangibles and intangibles that come with the raid. Before even like getting to the mouse and keyboard interactivity of it, I'm excited for all of the things that I know are going to come regardless.
Yeah, I think what I'm most looking forward to. First off, are you coming back to raid on a schedule again in this patch?
I'm going to try to. I'm going to use that nice new guild finder interface to try and find at least a heroic guild. If not, I might try the guild I was in during Battle of Dazar'alor, but we'll see. I am going to try and get back in a raiding schedule. Whether it's mythic or heroic is yet to be seen.
I'm gonna have to get with you after we record this. But I think another thing too is the race to world first, which is coming within a week. The 28th, right? Raid launches 21st, so the 28th, North America race to world first will start. All eyes are going to be on limit. Imperative. I think Easy is going to have a couple streams. Most of those guilds, Imperative and Easy, aren't going to be going for World First, but Limit will be, and that content to me is so awesome to watch. If you haven't rated in like an expansion or two, or even if you don't consume a lot of WoW streams, I understand like WoW Arena can be dry, but this is a time where you want to consume WoW streams. If you go on to Twitch and you see World of Warcraft up there, check it out for the race to world first. When Mythic first opens and those guilds are trying to get that title for the world first kill of N'Zoth, it is going to be awesome. It's such good content to watch. I would say definitely if Preach is casting it, try to find when he's casting for Method. At least, I mean, he casted in the last race, so I'm assuming he'll be in this race. He is awesome, and the information you get is awesome. The fights are actually cool to watch. I think it's really just great content, and there's like WoW isn't really a spectator game, but for that event, it definitely is, and it's cool to see.
Yeah, and you really do want to stay posted on this. Our release episode's coming out with the patch on the 14th. Next week on the 21st, Heroic and Normal will drop, so we'll be unpacking a little bit of how the patch has gone and our expectations of Normal and Heroic. But on the 28th, when our 28th episode comes out, we're going to be talking a little bit about the raid, but mostly getting geared up for that Mythic World First race. And it starts in 2 weeks. That's going to be immense. Put it on your calendars. Just like Sod said, you'll notice if you watch Twitch, suddenly the week of the 28th, WoW is going to be like very strong at the top of the charts, I would guess, similar to when Classic launched. Maybe not as big as Classic because that was massive, but it's going to be a big event on the 28th.
Yeah, that, and also there should be some classic news dropping soon. I would imagine we'd get a release date for BWL, maybe the next phase. So they obviously don't want to interfere with the new retail content that just came out, but I would say stay tuned within the next month or so. You should hear more about new content in Classic.
Yeah, thankfully we actually do have a date now for BWL. We're going to get BWL on February 12th. Those of you who are playing Classic right now, you can actually go out and do the attunement for BWL. That's going to involve essentially grabbing a quest and running through Upper Blackrock Spire. It's not a big deal. Just make sure you get it done before the 12th, and we will definitely be talking about it a little bit later in the month. I think right now, Classic is going to take a bit of a back seat while we dive into 8.3, the new massive raid, and the obviously huge Mythic World First race. All of those things are going to be happening this month. It's going to be a huge next 4 weeks for WoW and WoW news.
Yes, and now that I know the BWL release date, I have to log on my Classic character and get attuned for that. Unfortunately, I did play Classic today. I enjoyed it. I died like 7 times, so that was kind of depressing. Unfortunately, you can't have two monitors going and just neglect your character in Classic. Forgot about that.
Yep, it's those, and it's like those. It's funny going back to Classic and experiencing those things because you get annoyed by the little quality of life assurances that you've built up while playing retail, and then you go back to Classic and you're like, all of a sudden, like, oh man, now I know why this is here. I know why these systems were added because of so many complaints like this.
Yep, and with that, we will see you guys on the launch of 8.3. Thank you for listening, and see you next week.